night of May 10th, 2022, just before midnight, an officer with the Euless Police Department spotted a black Ford Focus heading south on FM 157. At first glance, it looked like just another car on the road, but then he noticed something strange. The license plates didn't match. One plate on the front, a completely different one on the back. At 11:53 p.m., the officer tried to pull the car over, but the driver, whose identity was unknown at the time, had no intention of stopping. The Ford shot forward, speeding into the darkness. The officer activated his lights and sirens, but the pursuit didn't last long. Euless police policy, like many others, prioritizes public safety, especially when the violation is minor. And so, with only a mismatched plate as the cause for the stop, the officer backed off, shutting down his lights and sirens, following at a safer distance. But even with the chase called off, something about this didn't feel right. Moments later, the car turned east onto Trinity Boulevard. About half a mile ahead, a sudden, blinding flash lit up the road, and the officer rushed forward and found a scene of devastation.
Continue eastbound from in there.
34, they just hit a transformer eastbound on Trinity at Main Street.
Big blue transformer, eastbound Trinity Main.
Start medic.
Start medic.
The car had slammed into a utility pole before colliding head-on with a Nissan Versa. Behind the wheel of that Nissan was 23-year-old Melissa Mappa, a Texas woman's university student pursuing her doctorate in occupational therapy. She had been driving home that night, unaware that danger was speeding toward her. When first responders reached her, she was unconscious. Moments later, she was pronounced dead. The passenger in the Ford was badly injured, trapped in the wreckage, and later pulled out by rescuers. But the suspect, a man in his 20s, abandoned the vehicle after the crash and tried to flee on foot. Witnesses saw him scramble into a ditch, trying to disappear into the night, but his escape was short-lived. Officers and bystanders caught him within minutes. The man was charged with felony evading arrest. Melissa's family and friends, both in Texas and back home in Ireland, were left devastated. They had lost a bright, determined young woman in an instant, her future stolen by a senseless chain of decisions. Some people blamed the police for calling off the chase, believing it might have prevented the crash, but others knew that in those moments, the officer had been following protocol, never expecting a simple traffic stop to end in tragedy. And yet, that's exactly what happened. On March 22, 2024, a yellow school bus made its way down State Highway 21 just outside Bastrop in central Texas. It was a Hays Consolidated Independent School District bus returning from a field trip carrying 44 pre-kindergarten students and 11 adults, tired, happy, and almost home. For those who don't know, Hays CISD serves the fast-growing communities of Kyle and Buda, and for many of these children, this was a day they had been looking forward to for weeks. It was just before 2 in the afternoon when a pickup truck appeared in the distance, moving erratically in the opposite lane, where this happened. Moments later, a concrete truck suddenly crossed the double yellow center line, veering directly into the school bus's path. The bus driver reacted instantly, steering to the right in a desperate attempt to avoid a head-on collision. But it was too late. The front passenger side of the truck struck the front of the bus. The impact, so violent, it sent the massive yellow vehicle toppling onto its right side. The overturned bus blocked part of the highway. A sedan traveling close behind had no time to stop and crashed into the rear of the bus. In an instant, a joyful return trip had turned into a scene of chaos. "53 people, students and adults, were injured. 2 lives were lost. 5-year-old Ulysses Montoya, one of the pre-K students, succumbed to his injuries shortly after the crash. The second victim, 33-year-old Ryan Wallace, was a Bastrop resident and a doctoral student at the University of Texas at Austin. He had been driving the sedan behind the bus when he collided with the wreckage. Both were pronounced dead at the scene. The highway was closed for hours as Bastrop County investigators worked to piece together what had happened. But what's even disturbing was the truck's driver, 43-year-old Jerry Hernandez, had a history of failed drug tests. He was prohibited from driving by federal regulations. He had been arrested the previous year on unrelated charges of domestic violence and criminal mischief. When questioned by Texas DPS troopers, Hernandez admitted he had smoked marijuana the night before, used cocaine the morning of the crash, and had slept for only 3 hours. The concrete truck was owned by FJM Concrete, a small Central Texas business. Its owner, Frank Martinez, later acknowledged he had not checked Hernandez's federal driving status or drug clearinghouse records before putting him behind the wheel. 2 days after the crash, Hernandez was arrested without incident and charged with 2 counts of criminally negligent homicide. A grand jury later indicted him on 4 felony counts, 2 of manslaughter, 2 of criminally negligent homicide. He now faces up to 18 years in prison, with sentencing scheduled for September 18, 2025. Multiple lawsuits have since been filed by injured passengers and victims' families against the school district, the bus driver, and the trucking company. 2 lives were stolen on that highway, one a young child with a future just beginning, the other a man pursuing his dreams. And it all happened because a driver who should never have been on the road was. On the night of July 4th, 2021, at around 10:15 p.m., something disturbing happened at the intersection of 17th Avenue North and Church Street in Midtown Nashville. Kirby, 20 years old and from Hendersonville, Tennessee, was driving home in his convertible with the top down. He had just watched Nashville's 4th of July fireworks from the top of St. Thomas Midtown's parking garage. A quiet spot, he chose to avoid the crowds and heavy traffic. One of his friends was in the passenger seat, while 2 more friends followed closely behind in a separate car equipped with a dash cam. As Kirby waited at a red light, a white sedan pulled up beside him on the left, where this happened. Without warning, a backseat passenger in the sedan rolled down the window and threw a lit firework toward Kirby's car. It struck Kirby in the head, bounced onto the folded convertible top, and exploded seconds later. The blast burned a hole through the fabric roof and scorched the trim and door. From the dash cam footage, you can see the people in the white sedan laughing as they sped away. Kirby immediately pulled over and called 911. He suffered minor burns on his fingers from trying to grab and throw the firework away, as well as ringing in his right ear that affected his hearing for days after the incident. Thankfully, his passenger was unharmed, but his car sustained nearly $3,000 in damage. A GoFundMe page was set up to help cover the repair costs, and Kirby's mother, Katie Kirby, shared the story on social media to raise awareness and help identify the people responsible. However, as of now, Metro Nashville police have not made any arrests, and the case remains open. The fact that this happened in 2021 and no one has been caught is troubling. The people who did this are still out there. Whether they saw it as a prank or not, it caused physical harm, property damage, and emotional distress, and next time, it could cost someone their life. On March 29, 2020, rain fell steadily over the Yongwu Expressway in Wuning County, Jiangxi Province, a winding stretch of rural highway linking the cities of Nanchang and Yichun. The road was wet and shiny because of rain, with a reduced visibility. A 7-passenger van made its way along the road that afternoon, driven by a local man named Joe. Inside were only 3 occupants, the driver and 2 passengers, well below the vehicle's legal capacity. Yet in rural parts of China, seatbelt use in the back is often neglected, and this day would be no exception. As the van moved at high speed across the wet surface, the tires lost their grip, where this happened. The vehicle drifted sideways while the driver was fighting for control until the front right corner slammed into the steel guardrail. In an instant, the van rolled onto its side, skidding to a stop along the right shoulder of the highway. The driver, wearing his lap and shoulder belt, stayed pinned in place, but the 2 women seated in the middle row were unrestrained. But the violent jolt launched the woman in black upward and backward into the rear of the van, her body striking the metal frame of a seat behind her. The woman in red was thrown forward from her seat, colliding hard with the interior. Neither had a way out, and both were tossed brutally around the cabin as the wreck came to rest. When emergency crews arrived, they found the driver still secured in his seat, shaken but able to walk away. The 2 women, however, suffered broken bones, severe bruising, and head trauma. They were alive, but in critical condition, and rushed to a nearby hospital. There were no signs of alcohol, no prior record of reckless driving, just a tragic chain of events made far worse by rain, speed, and the absence of a simple safety measure. On that slick stretch of road, survival had hinged on a seatbelt, and for 2 passengers, that choice was the difference between walking away and being carried away.